So, Jack, do you want to talk a bit about your journey and what got you into acting?
Well, I was born disabled. I've been a wheelchair user all my life. And I never really had too much of a clue what I wanted to do when I was young. I didn't know what was available for me. Journey started through sports. Like a lot of people's journeys who are disabled, sports sort of came to our aid. And I was an athlete for 7 years, training, competing all over Europe, all over the UK. That opened some doors for me. I won a few races in the UK, London Marathon, etc. And that led to me getting an acting agent, making a few appearances on TV. And then, one of the auditions that came up for the from my agent at that time was Bad Education. And I didn't really know who Jack Whitehall was at the time. You know, he'd done Fresh Meat and he was sort of trying to make a break on the comedy circuit. But I hadn't heard of him at that point. I was only I think I was 12 actually when I first came through to me. We had read-throughs. And there was a few different versions of the character. The actors that you saw weren't the original actors that were auditioning. The only three originals were myself, Leighton Williams, who played Stephen, and Nikki Runnacles, who played Chantel, were the only original three. Everybody else had a different actor. So it's quite a long process, really. But we had a good run with that. That sort of changed everything for us. You know, we had 3 series, we had the movie. And then for some of the actors, it really changed things for them. You know, they went off and done some crazy other things. I took a little bit of a break from acting. I did a little bit of a disappearance into the shadows a little bit. I had a daughter and took some time away. And now I'm trying to make a break back into the world of acting. Started my own company, production company. So writing my own TV series, my own movies, podcasts, etc. Yeah. So who knows where I could have been if I'd have kept up the acting and whatnot. Who knows? But we're here now and we're going to make it work.
Do you think what motivated you to set up the production company and to do that kind of work? Was it the lack of representation for disabled people? Was it just that's where your passion lies?
Yeah, I think, it was actually a very spur of the moment thing that came off the back of a conversation I'd had with a buddy of mine. So me and a good friend of mine who's also in a wheelchair, he's known me since I was in nappies. His name's Andy Mills. He's the co-founder of my production company. We had a holiday booked to Vegas this year. And this was I think maybe 4 or 5 months before we flew. And so we met up for a couple of drinks and we had a good laugh and we got speaking about sort of lack of representation in the media and struggling to make a break back into the industry for me. And he came up with this idea that we should grab a couple of cameras and we should film Vegas. And the more we had to have a couple of drinks and have a couple of drinks. And next thing you know, we're saying, why don't we just do a full 2-hour feature length mockumentary and we'll send it off to Netflix and Amazon and everyone. And we came up with this insanely far-fetched idea. And we started speaking about this idea, to other people. And they were going, yeah, it's a great idea. You should do that. I'd watch that, And the more we spoke about it, the more we did about it, the more it made sense to try and do it and have fun with it. And that then led to us creating the production company because we thought, it's our idea and we've got a bunch of other ideas for stuff we want to do. So we had no idea what it means to own a production company. He works in tech and has worked in tech for 15 years. So he's great on that side of things. And then I'm your sort of loudmouth party boy actor who knows how to sell, anything, anywhere. You know what I mean? I'm front of house. I do the selling and I'll try and get the investors on board. And I'm a writer, so I do a lot of that. But we work quite well together in that sense because he's sort of more back office, back of house, and does all the business and the finances. And he's a very keen filmmaker. He actually likes holding the camera, whereas I love being in front of it. So, it works quite well.
The dream team.
Yeah, a little bit. We've got some writers as well that work for us. We're sort of at a really poignant time in the company, but the make or break time for us because we are about 90% complete with the pilot episode for our new TV series idea that we're going to be pitching to Amazon and everyone to try and turn this into a series, you know, so we can actually go and produce it. So yeah, we've got meetings today, we've got meetings tomorrow, a big read through tomorrow at Brewdog in London. So yeah, big time for us. We need to sort of ace this project.
And for you, obviously being driven by that lack of representation for disabled actors and disabled people, what do you think the industry could do more or could learn from to improve that culture of lack of representation?
It's a good question, because I feel like there's no reason why we're in this scenario. You know, I don't feel like it needs to be the way that it is. I don't think it ever needed to be the way that it is. You know, I feel like it's just sort of like, I remember when I was back doing the acting and stuff, you know, there was certain days where I wasn't filming at all on those days because of the location in which we were filming. And they'll just, you know, oh yeah, wheelchair, health and safety, well, we just won't film that day. And, you know, everybody else is filming, you know, and I sort of cram all my bits into another day. And I feel like there's lots of little things like that, you know, that come into play. People like, I don't really want to deal with the health and safety, or we have to think about location, and if we just have everybody can walk, then it's all fine. Whereas we start adding people in wheelchairs, and then we have to have, you know, a medic, and then he might need help in and out of the car, and, you know, and there's all this sort of stuff, and, you know, it's not needed. It's very, very minimal stuff people worry about for no reason at all. So I mean, I feel like we are in a period of time where there is change. You know, I feel like it very slowly is changing, and it is becoming more inclusive. But I don't feel like we're ever going to live in a world, to be honest with you, which is completely inclusive. I say it's sad, but when you've lived it all your life, and you've seen it all your life, and you've lived 26 years of it, and that, you know, you see how it goes. Really and truly, I don't see it ever being 100% where we want it to be, you know. Yeah. So it's a real hard one.
And you mentioned earlier about starting a family and stuff after you step back from acting. What's it important? How are you trying to impart wisdom on your children to kind of believe that disability can be something to be proud of, and that it's not something to be ashamed of?
Yeah, well, my daughter's also disabled, so you know, she has the same disability as I do. Unfortunately, it was genetic, and she had a 50-50 chance of also having it because her mum doesn't. And she has had 7 broken bones, and she's 4. By the time I was 4, I probably had broken in the region of about 10 to 15, maybe 20 broken bones. And the reason that it's not as bad for her isn't because she has a less severe type. She actually has the same type. But she is on a bone strengthening treatment that was invented around about 2005. And it creates artificial calcium and collagen in the bones, enabling her to be stronger than I ever could have been, right? And it works. She can walk, she can run, she'll probably never need a wheelchair. Very different quality of life, and I'm so grateful for that. I was a little bit of a guinea pig for this medication when I was about 9 years old, and it did work, it did help, but I'd already broken 40 bones at the time that this thing came around. I'd done the damage, and I was already in a wheelchair for like 6-7 years, so it wasn't going to change too much for me. But she started this treatment at 8 months old, and so that's going to drastically change her entire childhood and future. So, you know, we get on really, really well. We get on really special, me and my daughter. I love her to pieces. And she knows exactly who her daddy is. She is hilarious with the wheelchair. She doesn't see it as, I think, she couldn't, I can't speak for her, but it's almost like she couldn't imagine a world where her dad isn't in a wheelchair. You know, it's very normal to her. You know, she's never asked me once, you know, why do I have a daddy in a wheelchair but my friends don't? You know, I just think it, you know, it is what it is, and you know, she gets that. You know, she's very funny, she's so clever, and when she does ask questions, it's because she it comes from actually like a place of curiosity, and
Yeah.
it's intelligent, it really is. Um, what did she say recently? She said something funny recently. She said, she goes something like, Daddy, will you ever be able to get out of your wheelchair and walk? And I said, no. I said, I can take steps and stand up a little bit. I said, well, no. I said, I can't really walk, baby. I said, I don't think that's ever going to happen. She was like, well, that's just lazy. And it's funny, I had to laugh at that, and it just comes from a good place. So I feel like, with my daughter, she will grow up, with a very strong understanding from a very young age that disability is nothing negative, and it's nothing to, she's part of this industry, she's part of this community of people who have disabilities and are living in this time. And she'll be part of the same battle that we're in, the same fight that for inclusivity. She'll be part of that for sure. But I'm glad I'm grateful that I have a daughter in a world where there is change happening, and there is fairer representation. She, as a little girl, does not get bullied or have any issues, and her medical care is second to none. So I can't really turn around and say, that my experiences of being a disabled dad or having a disabled daughter have been in any way been negative. We've had its challenging moments. It's not nice seeing your child in pain, and though that will never change. That unfortunately. But I'm grateful that we do live in a world where I am able to have a child and have a disabled child, and she is able to sort of go to nursery and go to school and have fun and be herself, and it not be a hindrance. I mean, there's a time, 30, 40 years ago where being me going to a normal school or, going out to the shops or going out shopping would have been a problem. There'd have been some fight back there, there'd have been some issues. So we do live in a time of change where it is acceptable. And I'm very grateful for that. And I hope, that she continues to see the change as I do as time goes by.
And you mentioned earlier about being involved with sport and stuff. Is that something you're still actively involved with? And how do you see that? What does that look like at the moment in terms of like inclusion and diversity within sport for you?
I don't do sport anymore. I'm now a fat bastard. I don't do sport. No, I'm a team. I play pool. That's the pool team. I play pool for the England team, which is a sort of newer adventure, if you will, in my life. I made the England team last year and competed at the World Championships in France last year. So still playing, still competing. I don't know if you can class pool as a sport. It's a very lazy sport, but it's not actually. It is a sport, I guess. And back in the day, I did athletics, and that was very different. That's sort of all I ended up knowing, and I trained very hard. And my dad was heavily involved in this as well. He took me to every training session I ever did. He took me to every race I ever raced, and quite often as well, got his bike out and did laps of on the streets of me, and we had a good thing going there. But I was fit, I was healthy. I didn't really feel like it at the time. I was just a kid. But I was pretty fit and healthy, and I enjoyed it. I made the decision though to end it all for acting. I saw it as an opportunity for me in my life to go off and excel. And it's not that I felt like I couldn't do that with the athletics. I think for me, I sort of had maybe the wrong mentality. As I got older, I sort of became into my mid-teens. I developed this wrong mentality of like, I don't know if I can be asked to train 4 years for Rio de Janeiro Paralympics only to not get selected. If you tell me now I'm going to go in 4 years' time, I'll train very hard for it. But if you tell me that I've got to train really, really hard in order to possibly not get on the team, and I have to now do another 4 years of training for Tokyo in 2020, then 8 years. And I just sort of developed that mentality, which is wrong. If it clearly at that point in time, it wasn't a passion of mine anymore. If that's the thought processes that I'm taking, but it is inclusive sport. It's for me. I sort of grew up and had no idea what I could do and couldn't do. And I don't think my parents had much of an idea of what I could and couldn't do. They're not disabled at all. So when this opportunity came around to go to a sports morning, I took it with my dad. And it turned out I was bloody brilliant at all sports. I was basketball, tennis, table tennis, cricket. I was playing all of it and I was great. And I knew that I was good at sport. I enjoyed PE when I was in school. It was sort of my favorite thing. And I went to I invited to an athletics club, and it was just for disabled athletes, just for wheelchair races. And so I was then entered into a world, of disability sport, high level disability sport. And it became a very inclusive place. I had some very, very good friends that I made from that period of time in my life. I got to go to some cool places. There was a little bit of fame that came with it as well, winning races and sort of being that guy in a regional, national level. I was recognized as being an athlete. But it was an inclusive place, and it still is. But I feel like there's always going to be the issues. And I don't know necessarily about each individual sport and what issues they face as athletes. But for example, in the world of pool playing and snooker, there's not enough of a profile for wheelchair pool and wheelchair snooker for us to receive any sponsorship. So as a team, we don't receive any sponsorship. As players, we have to find our own individual sponsorship from companies that want to come on board. It's not a sport that's recognised by the Paralympic community. It's not a sport that has many countries playing in for the men's and women's team. Yeah, there's loads of countries, but wheelchair teams, there's only 3 countries that I know: England, Wales, and France. So there's literally it. When you want a world championships, that's literally it. You know what I mean? So it's a tough one. It really is. We want to try and raise the profile for wheelchair pool specifically, and get the world more interested. If you like watching pool, and you'll like watching wheelchair pool. If you don't like pool, don't watch pool. You know what I mean? No one flicks on the snooker and hates it and watches the full 3 hours of it. If you like it, you'd like it. If you don't, you don't. But what we need to do is raise the profile, let people know that we're out here. We're incredible pool players. We put so much work in. We've got all this equipment and we spend all this money on, our craft. We're out here, we to raise profile. I feel like that was always the issue with a lot of sports. A lot of people is that they don't feel that they're getting the recognition they deserve for what they do, or the sport that they play isn't as highly recognized as it could be. So yeah, I think that's sort of the next big thing for us, is to sort of raise profile and let people know that we're out here.
What I'm getting from you, all of your responses, is that sense of community, like whether it's through the people who you started the bad education with, or whether it's the people who you've built that community around you as you've grown older. Has that network been important to you as you've got older?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I've met some great people in my time, great actors, and I'm not in contact with everybody nowadays. You grow up, don't you? And you sort of go off on your separate paths. But I've met some crazy cool people and done some great things. I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. I sort of adopted this mentality almost like it was a religion earlier on this year, in fact. Have you ever heard of a story called the Chinese farmer?
No. Remind me.
The Chinese. Oh, I'll give you the Chinese farmer story, right? And it really it changed my life. It really did. If you adopt this mentality, and as a result of this, actually, what I'm getting at is that everybody I've met in my life, I had to meet for a reason in order to literally be in this spot right now on a FaceTime to you or on Zoom to you. So it had to happen that way. That heartbreak had to happen, and that broken bone had to happen. So I wouldn't be in that spot right now, because that would have been detrimental. Instead, I'm here right now. I'm a big believer that it all happens that way, and there's a sort of defined plan for you, I guess. But Chinese farmer story, you got an elderly Chinese man and his son, okay, and they're turnip farmers. This is back in the day, long time ago, right? And the old man, he's a little too old to work the land. So he sits in the hut attached to the farm. And he sits there all day. And the son's out with the workhorse, right? And he's ploughing the land, okay? And the horse has got all the equipment, and he's digging up all the turnips. And anyway, one day, his horse jumps over the fence and it runs for the hills. And his son goes to his dad. He goes, Dad, the horse has just run away, mate. We can't do our job here. We can't farm the land without the horse. There's nothing we can do. And he goes, yeah, it might be a nightmare. It may not be a nightmare. He looks at his dad. He goes, this guy's out for lunch. What do you mean? Right, of course this is a nightmare. So a few days go by and the son's sat on the porch, right? He's starving, hungry, right? And he hears a thunder coming from the top of the hills. And he looks over and he sees 500 wild horses running down the hill. And in front of that horse is the workhorse. And they run into the field, they run into the paddocks, and he shuts the gate. And he goes up to his dad. He goes, Dad, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. The workhorse came back with 500 wild horses. Own it farming, Dad. We're rich. Let's sell horses. We're in the trade game right now. And his dad, he sits there and he goes, yeah, it could be a miracle. It may not be a miracle. He's like, what do you mean this isn't a miracle? We're literally rich, Dad. So the son, a few days go by, his son's out on the land and he's domesticating these wild horses so he can sell them. And there's this one horse just isn't playing ball. And he's trying to get it to sort of do what he wants to do, and it gets a little too close. This horse rears his leg up, kicks him in his leg, shatters it, completely shatters his leg. He gets dragged into the house by his dad and he gets put into a chair. This is a long time ago. They got no health care. They're going to wrap that up in mint leaves and sprinkle some herbs and hope he's all right, sort of thing. And he looks at his dad. He goes, Dad, this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare because if I can't domesticate these horses for sale, then they have to go. And if they have to go, then we have to start growing turnips again. And I can't do that with a broken leg. This is a nightmare. And his dad looks at him and he goes, yeah, son, this might be a nightmare. It may not be a nightmare. He still doesn't understand what his dad means. So another few days pass and they're sitting there in this chair. He's in a world of pain, right? He really is. And they hear this thunder coming from the hills again. And as it looks over the hills, you've got 6,000 samurai on horseback come riding down the hill towards his little hut. And they look at the dad, they look at the son, and look back at the dad, and they go, we need your son. We're going off to fight the Maui army. We need everybody to join us. And his dad goes, well, you can't. Look at him. He's got his leg. There's no way. If you could have him, I'll give him to you. I swear to God. Right? But he's shit shirt. You can't take him. So the samurai says, yeah, all right, fair enough. Fair enough, we can't have him. All right. And they get back on their horses, and all 6,000 samurai ride off to their death against the Maui army. They all lose. And I remember hearing this story, right? And I remember going, you know, if that horse hadn't run away, then they would have found the wild horses. And if that wild horses hadn't come back and kicked him in the leg and broke his leg, he'd have fought for the samurais and be dead. Everything had to happen the way that it did. Right? What are the odds the horse would escape, find the wild horses, come back with the wild horses? What are the odds that he was in that exact position, standing there when his leg got broke? Right? All of it had to happen the way it did. And I've had a bit of a tough year this year for me. I had a cancer scare, I had a broken shoulder, I had some breakups. I've had started a company and I'm trying to make this work, and finances because I've rushed myself into this business. I mean, not making any money yet. So that's a big thing for me to work out and do and make sure this company works out for me. But everything does has to happen for a reason. And I know that every broken bone I've ever had to have, and every bit of pain I've ever had to have, and every single person I've had to meet has had to happen for a reason. So of course, what I'm getting at is the people that I've met and had as part of my network have been vital in me being exactly who I am to this very day. And that's because I've adopted this mentality. There are people that I don't like that I've met, and I will still tell you that I had to meet them. I had to know them, whether I wanted to or not, whether I wish they were part of my journey or not. Perhaps not, but they are. And that's everything. A combination of all of that is what makes you who you are and me who I am. So yeah, I think people have been pretty vital, and it also makes you excited. You know, who's going to be in your next community? Who's going to be then the people that you're networking with next? I like adopting that mentality as well, sort of unknown. You know, it's a bit exciting. Um, so yeah, pretty important people. Yeah.
I think I know what the answer is going to be to this last question, but if you could go back and speak to yourself when you were younger and when you were really in a like struggling, or when you didn't have the understanding of your disability that you do now, what would you say to yourself?
Ah, that's a good question, man. What would I say to like younger me?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know really. I would definitely tell myself that everything's gonna be okay. You know, you're gonna be fine in the future. Um, I'd probably tell myself to go to uni. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. But that could have come in handy from time to time, maybe having, would have helped get a job at some point, or yeah, I don't know. I think I would have told myself to basically, definitely have a craft. I think I would have said, I would have told him to carry on with the athletics longer, maybe not give up as soon as you did. You know, I'd have told myself to go to uni. I'd have told myself to go and learn a little bit more than I did in my life. I was very quick to get out of education because of the acting. I just sort of saw my life starting a lot earlier than other people's, and was very happy to just run with that, and then that be, look at me, and to everyone else, and that was sort of very much me at the age of about sort of 17, 18. I was ready to just go. I did the bare minimum in school, and then left. So I would tell myself that everything's okay. I tell myself to study a little bit harder, maybe pay attention a little bit more. I also would tell myself, there's no need to rush. I feel like that's an important, thing to tell your younger self is there's no need to rush. I feel like I grew up very, very quickly when I was going through this acting and being an actor. And then next thing I'm 18, I'm living this life. And everything for me was a rush. It was a rush for me to be married one day and have a house and have kids. I wanted all of that by the time I was in my early 20s for no reason at all. And it was absurd that I adopted this weird mentality that I had to have a completely full life by my early 20s. And that wasn't good. I've had many failed relationships over my time, and I've been engaged twice in my life. I'm 26. And there's relationships that maybe I could have done without. In my late teens. Save money as well. Save money. Don't go drinking so often. 18, 21 was a blur for me, for real. I was very heavy on the party scene, and probably like clubbing like 4 or 5 times a week. I don't even want to hesitate how much money I lost between the ages of 18 and 21 from going partying. So I just said maybe, get a hobby, get a hobby and stay home more, Yeah, that's what I would have told myself.
I think that's a really nice note. And thank you so much, Jack, for chatting to me.
Of course. Yeah.
You never talk about your emotions. If you've got a problem, you just suck it up and get on with it. And you never let it interfere with anything you're doing, which unfortunately tends to compound the challenges and the stress. And you don't feel like you can go anywhere. I mean, I'm really lucky. I'm married. I've got 2 fantastic kids. I've got 2 reasonably successful businesses. And yet, to me, whatever I did was never good enough.